Hey guys, this is Camfrey15 back at it with another video for you guys, and I'm back with another fairy tale arc review. And this time we are talking the Tenrou Island arc, one of my favorite arcs of, I guess, the betterment of this series. Even though apparently, from what I've been hearing or from what I heard, like this arc is not like widely liked, but it's like not in my top three, but it's in my top five favorite fairy tale arcs because I think this is where the story really kind of changes. Whether you say it's for the better or whether you say it's for the worse, hey, it's fine with me. I think personally, in my opinion, um, after the Tenrou Island arc, the series of fairy tale is like two for three in terms of the arcs that come after it, in terms of the canonical arcs. If you're talking about the filler arcs, which is the Key of the Starry Sky arc and that Celestial Spirits arc, my God, I think those fail. But other than that, we're here at Tenrou Island. And finally, this is a fun fact, behind the scenes personal information. This is my first recording since coming back from a vacation off of Vegas. So yeah, so as of July 22nd, 2021, this is my first video. So you should be lucky that I'm talking fairy tale for the very first time. Anyways, let's start this premiere episode of fairy tale arc reviews talking about the Tenrou Island arc. Now this arc, again, like I said, I'm guessing in the fairy tale community, it's like, I guess not a lot of people like this arc. Personally, I love this arc. I think this arc is utter greatness. And I think it's one of the best fairy tale arcs in the series. Now, mostly it's because some moments that obviously people want to pick out and say, oh, friendship, power of friendship moments here, which is mostly stemming from the Urza versus Azuma fight and the Natsu, Gray, Urza, Lucy, and Wendy fight versus Hades, which in some cases they're right, but in some cases they're also wrong too, in both their fights. But when I talk about those fights individually, I'll explain why I don't believe they don't use the power of friendship as much as they do in those respective battles. But hey, that's what fairy tale's about, right? Power of friendship. Anyways, this arc has it all. This arc has the emotional moments, some pretty good damn battles in this arc. And it also starts ship stuff or relationships between characters. In other words, the relationship of Gajil and Levy, aka Gali, and the relationship between Elfman and Evergreen, which has many different callings. I'm just gonna call it the one I remember. It's like Elf Ever. So yeah. Personally, my opinions on those two ships getting started. Hey, that's fine with me personally. Gajil, the Gali ship is probably outside of the Nalu and probably Gruvia ship is probably my favorite fairy tale ship in the series outside of those two respective obvious shipping stuff. A close second is definitely Jerza. But yeah, and then Elf Ever. I like the relationship. It's not up there because they don't get much screen time as, say, the relationship like a Gruvia, a Jerza, Nalu, or even a Gali. Even though they don't get much screen time, like literally, I'll say it in the video, like the only time like they really actually show development towards or at least hint or reference this relationship is obviously the Tenrou Island arc, some parts in the Grand Magic Games arc, and then by the end of the series, they essentially damn near confirm that they're essentially together. So, yeah, but other than that, it's like they don't show much. It's like the Elf Ever ship is like the ship that's like with the other ships that are obviously canonical to the story. They just don't spend much time on it. Like, say, for example, it's like the Sting and Yukino relationship. We all know those two characters like each other. They just don't focus on that relationship as much. But hey, the one thing I do like about fairy tales as opposed to other animes is the fact that they know that there are ships. Mashima knows the ships, and sometimes he goes through with the ships and he actually hooks those characters up. in the future. Unlike some other animes where, oh, obviously these we in other animes, yes, we ship some characters, but it's very rare that we see like actual characters show up or hook up together, especially when it's shown in anime. Like the only other known anime to like have ships and they have it go through are like Naruto, Dragon Ball. You know, you don't really see it from your One Pieces, My Hero Academia to an extent, but not really. Any other shonen shows, you know, I can think of in my head, whatever. But yeah, anyways, the premise behind the Tenrou Island arc is the fact that, well, every year Fairy Tail holds a competition where they select a certain number of wizards within their guild to participate in the Tenrou Island trial to become S-class wizards. And we see in this arc, obviously, to start off, that some of our characters have some trials that they have to overcome. And essentially, the characters are first things first before I say anything. If you want to know or want to rewatch the Tenrou Island arc or reread it on your own time, the Tenrou Island arc covers manga chapters 200 to 253 and anime episodes 96 to 122. Now, like I said, the mages are the wizards that are selected to participate in the S-class trial are Natsu, Gray, Juvia, Levy, Kana, Freed, Elfman, and this new character we come across named Mest. We also find out that they all each can have partners, Makarov tells them. So Natsu chooses Happy, Gray chooses Loki, Juvia forcibly is forced to team up with Lazana because Lazana kind of goads her into doing this. Levy is kind of essentially goaded in as well because Gajil just comes in and is like, don't worry, I'm going to get you that S-class. I'm going to make you bigger than you already are, which starts the relationship between them because Gajil kind of made a flirtatious comment right there. Kana eventually, after expressing her heart out to Lucy, which we'll get into a second, has Lucy as her partner. Freed has Bixlow as his partner. Elfman kind of is forced to have Evergreen be his partner because she's mad at Freed for not choosing him, which starts the Elfman and Evergreen relationship there. And then Mest, eventually, in his weird, obnoxious way, he says he was Mistigan's disciple or his pupil, and he essentially makes Wendy join him, even though it's against Carla's word. Now, in terms of Kana, this is probably the one arc, if I'm telling you, even though they do focus on other fairy tale characters, Kana is probably the one fairy tale character, like I said, that is a side character that has the arc kind of more than likely centered around them. Just like the beginning intro arcs to Fairy Tail, we saw Gray, Lucy, and Urza all have the representative arcs where the story somewhat centered around them. The same thing with Happy and Carla, two characters that focus around them, center around them. The Ration says, even though it wasn't featured much and really to the tail end, Wendy was kind of a main integral focus alongside that arc too. And here, the same case is here for Kana Alberona, where this is kind of her arc. We see her shine, where we see her get really her most character development out of any of the other arcs within the series. Like, this is her arc represented. Like, if you ask me, what is the main feature arc that Kana is featured in the most and gets the most screen time and the most development, it's the Tenrou Island arc. Mostly because of her backstory that we'll get into near the tail end, I guess, the middle portion / tail end of this arc. And we find out that Kana has taken the S-class trial over and over and over again. Like, I think it was like 5 times she's taken it and all failed. And mostly we know that Kana was really the first, I guess you could say, young person that came into Fairy Tail before Natsu, Gray, Mira Jane and her family, and then even Urza. She was like legit the first person, and she tells Lucy that this will be her last trial if she doesn't pass it. and stuff like that. And the reason why she wants to be an S-class wizard is so she can have the courage to tell this very special person a secret. Now, when you start the arc off, they don't give it away who it is, but we later find out it's Gildarts, because we later find out that Gildarts is her biological father. But I'll speak more about that when we get to that point and stuff like that. So eventually, after all that stuff, a week passes by in the fairy tale time, and they all get ready to ride this boat to Tenrou Island, which is fairy tale's essentially sacred ground and the grave site of their first master, Mavis Vermilion. And that's where they always held the S-class trial there and stuff like that. So essentially on the way there, eventually Makarov tells them, listen, there are these different paths when your trial starts you can go on. So you have the routes where you can take a Serenity route where you don't have to do anything. You just automatically go on to the next round of the trial. While the other the other passageways to get to the second round of the S-class trial is you're either fighting an S-class wizard, which is Gildarts, Urza, or Mira Jane, or you're fighting each other, and one of you has to beat each other to move on. So we see after everybody leaves, all the routes are taken. So we find out that Gajo and Levy, they had the Serenity route, so they don't fight anybody. Natsu ends up fighting Gildarts. Juvia and Lazana end up fighting Urza. Elfman and Evergreen end up fighting Mira Jane, while Bixlow and Freed end up fighting Lucy and Kana, while Mest and Wendy end up fighting Loki and Gray and stuff like that. So to just do a quick rundown, Urza essentially handles Lazana and Juvia with utter ease. Like, she utterly just destroys them, and essentially she just beats them easily to the point they have to submit to lose because they have nothing that they can do against her. Elfman and Evergreen, excuse me, looked like they were going to lose because they were cornered into a corner by, obviously, Mara Jane. But because Evergreen comes up with the idea of essentially telling a little white lie to Mara Jane, saying that they were going to get married and they were expecting a child, which I thought was a funny thing because you get a very comedic scene where Mara Jane just imagines what Elfman and Evergreen's child would look like. And it is so funny because she just literally starts crying. She's like, my freaking nephew would be ugly, which was hilarious and funny and stuff like that. But essentially, because Mira's kind of really gullible and she really does love her brother and her sister, she actually ends up believing it. And she's like, oh, you guys can pass scot-free. I'm like, what? I'm guessing she probably didn't want to hurt Evergreen, maybe because she thought Evergreen's pregnant and stuff like that. So yeah, so she lets them go by. Mest and Wendy easily, just like the Urza matchup, get defeated by Loki and Gray. Mest tries to take them both on, but it's too much. And then by using like these pickled fruit or something like that, it kind of sheds like a shiver down Wendy's spine to the point she doesn't like what she's seeing on the faces they're making, and it's making her face pucker. So then she ends up losing as well. So that's what kind of happens there. Now, Bixlow and Freed, essentially the fight with Kana and Lucy is pretty funny. They kind of try to seduce Freed, but they end up defeating Freed and Bixlow, and we kind of find out that kind of Freed and Bixlow kind of threw their match because they felt like it was to them that they owed it to them to let them go past. And they're morally talking about what happened back in the Battle of Fairy Tale, because back in the Battle of Fairy Tale arc, Kana fought Freed but lost. Damn near almost died in that fight. And Bixlow fought Lucy. Even though they both lost in the representative matches, Lucy kind of has a little bit of a W against Bixlow, but morally it's Loki that won that fight for Lucy. So yeah, they managed to defeat them because they essentially threw the match. You know, Bixlow's like, "You sure we should have did that? You could have been S-class like Lox is." And Bixlow or Freed's like, Nah, I think it's better for that we just let them go. I feel like I owe them something for what they did back in the Battle of Fairytale Arc, which I thought it was a nice sign of respect, saying that the Thunder Legion, in some cases, still atoned for their sins from that arc. Now, obviously, the biggest round of the matchup is the Natsu versus Gildarts fight. And the Natsu versus Gildarts fight is, well, it's a utterly smosh match of a fight because Natsu's essentially just getting smashed by Gildarts and everything. And yeah, they make it a little bit comedic and everything and stuff like that, make it look like Natsu has a chance. But really, the only thing Natsu does is he's only able to push Gildarts like a few feet on the ground. Well, other than that, that's kind of it. And seeing this growth from Natsu, obviously Gildart's like, okay, yeah, you clearly you've grown, so you can clearly pass. But Natsu's like, no, I really want to beat you, I want to knock you out, everything. And that's when Gildart's like, okay, fine. And then Gildarts essentially flexes his magic power on Natsu, which essentially makes Natsu literally tremble in fear. And this is like one of the first times in the series, if not the first time in the series, we actually see Natsu like legit freaking scared. Like I think even Natsu says like, this is the first time I've ever felt true fear and everything. And essentially because of it, Natsu essentially is like, you know what? Yeah, I give up. I lost. Which is very rare because we know Natsu is the type of shonen character, or the shonen lead character that, well, they just, despite how strong a character is, they continue to fight. They don't just give up. But Natsu here, he just straight up gives up, which again, like I said, on my first watch, I was actually shocked that he just easily gave up. He's just like, okay, I concede. You win. And essentially Gildarts just comes up on him and he tells him, listen, I know you just gave up, but guess what? You still lost. And even now, just like, but I lost. And Gildarts essentially tells him, like, listen, the key to becoming a great wizard is learning when it's feeling that fear and learning when it's okay to accept defeat when clearly there's a stronger opponent ahead of you. And that's only going to make you stronger and become a better wizard in the future and stuff like that, which that plot point or those words from Gildarts essentially come back to Natsu in the fight against Hades and everything. So Natsu eventually passes on. We see that after that, if they all meet up again, they're clearly all affected, or Natsu's clearly affected by this, but eventually he cheers up and he's like, all right, he has a newfound passion to essentially win the S-Class trials, and he's telling everybody, he's like, listen, I'm going to beat all of you guys and win the S-Class trial and become the next S-Class wizard. Now, we see Lily and Carla eventually fly to Tenrou Island because Carla and Lily are really kind of unsure about Mess because they don't know if he's been a part of the guild this entire time, which they hint at so many times in this arc about other fairy tale members saying like, is he in a guild? Has he ever been in this guild and stuff like that? So yeah. Now, after round one, Makarov is telling the people that passed the first trial is the fact that, well, the next thing to becoming an S-Class wizard is you have to find the gravesite of Mavis Vermilion. I'll be there, sitting there, and then that will be my way to confirm that you have passed your S-Class trial and you can now officially be an S-Class wizard and stuff like that. Now, in terms of some members, Mess and Wendy actually decide to explore the island after failing the test. And throughout this entire scene, you have Mess give this damn look like he's about to do something very inappropriate, very wrong, and he's got like sinister motives or something like that. Like, I kid you not, he gave the face of the P word when every time they zoomed in on his face, especially in the damn anime. I didn't read the manga for this series, but the anime, just the way he was looking, he was like, as he's looking at Wendy, I'm like, yeah, if you showed this to somebody, a grown man with a little girl, who's probably about like 12 years old at this point or something like that, essentially, you would have, the person checking this up be like, he's about to do something very wrong, is he? Now, technically he doesn't, even though he makes those very disgusting faces that are very questionable. But yeah. Now, Now, Guildars, Bixlo, and Free, they eventually left and they went back to the guild and stuff like that. Now, Urza, Juvia, Lazana, and Mira Jane, they're all resting and recuperating from the camp. But then obviously Urza brings the fact like, Mess and Wendy ain't here from their failed trials. Interesting. So that's when Urza with Juvia go out to look for them. Now, coming back to people participating, we see Elfman and Evergreen eventually, after getting chased by this one creature, they fall down to this one ravine area, and they actually run into the Black Wizard Zareth, who's kind of an integral part of this arc as well. And essentially, because of it, they're almost killed by his magic, the contradictory curse that essentially, I guess you can say in a grand scheme of things, kills everything within its sight. So it's like Hakai from Dragon Ball, just, I guess, more deadly. Well, they're both deadly attacks, but regardless, it's like a Hakai. But whatever, when he releases his magic, it just kills anything in sight, anything living in sight. So you have green gas, it turns the grass into dead grass. The leaves fall off the trees, and people probably just disintegrate and turn into damn near skeletons and stuff like that. Because of this, they're almost killed, but Natsu comes in and saves them and everything. But this is when we get the interesting thing about Zareth here. And we see that Zareth apparently in some sort of way knows Natsu and exactly knows Natsu by name and by face and knows who he is. So that definitely is a foreshadowing to future events in the storyline. And it's funny because only a few, I was watching a video, I think it was for Neverworld's video, Hiromashi, because he made a point in his video that the fact that Hiro Mashima made a article or gave an interview talking about all his different series, Rave Master, Fairy Tail, Eden Zero. And he said specifically about Eden Zero, he kind of did like the writing of the chapters and stuff like that on the fly. So as new as a new chapter of any series you read, it was the same thing as he was creating Fairy Tail. Like I think he said in that interview, like the only like thing I had set in stone from the start was really Natsu's really key backstory and who he really was. Which if you see the series, I'm gonna keep it secret till then. But if you've seen the series, you obviously know what Natsu's relationship to Zareth / his backstory is. And it's crazy to think about, like, maybe Fairy Tail could have turned. Now, I still like Fairy Tail, but maybe more people would have liked Fairy Tail if Hiro Mashima really didn't do the whole, whatever happens, this chapter isn't running out, happens, and I'll come up with something by the time I'm writing the next chapter. Nothing like pre-planned or pre-stoned, like, oh, this happens. And maybe more people, if it was like a series where Mashima actually had a full-out kind of story drawn out to like, okay, I can go here, then go here, then go here, and have callbacks over here, here, here. Maybe more people might have liked the series. Again, there are still, good number of people that like Fairy Tail. We just know that there is an overarching army of people that, hate Fairy Tail. And I'm just wondering, maybe if Mashima didn't go the direction of being blind going into a new chapter when he's writing it, just like we are when we're reading a new chapter, maybe some things might have turned out a little bit better in some cases, and maybe things would have been some things. Now, again, I love Fairy Tail, but I will admit, for somebody who likes Fairy Tail does have its faults. It is not perfect. I still think Fairy Tails are fairly good show, and I think people definitely underrate it and definitely hate on it for no apparent reason. And I understand where they're coming from. There are issues in Fairy Tail, but I'm just saying, like I said, it seems like I'm guessing Mashima only really had, I guess the only thing he had drawn out was the Natsu backstory and what Natsu's character is about. But eventually Zareth's magic essentially gets out of control again. Natsu gets caught up in it, but he manages to survive. But the only thing is his scarf is complete black. Now, again, we're cutting back to Mest. Mest essentially notices the wave of energy emitted from Zareth. And essentially, that's when he finds out Zareth is on this island. This is fantastic. This is great. And stuff like that. Now, that's also when we cut over to the guild Grimoire Hearts, which is another member hinted at back in the Rashion Seis arc, The Grimoire Heart is another alliance member in the Barham, or the Balam Alliance, or the Barham Alliance. Which in this arc they're specified to be the strongest guild in the Barham Alliance. Which, as somebody who's seen the Tartaros arc, it's like, how are these guys proclaimed to be the strongest guild in Fairy Tail, or strongest guild in the Barham Alliance? Now, then again, this was way before we knew anything before Tartaros. And again, like I said, the Tartaros arc takes place 7 years after this arc does. So it makes sense that Tartaros probably grew in power over time and stuff like that. But even when you look at that, it's like Grimoire Heart should be the weaker guild because we know what the Tartaros guild is formed of. So yeah, and that's when Ultra is like, okay, look, hey, Master Hades, we found Zeref. He's here on the island, and we're gonna go retrieve him and stuff like that. So essentially, this is when Hades like, okay, go retrieve Zeref, but at the same time also kill Fairy Tail and exterminate them. And he tells this to his guild main people, the 7 kin of Purgatory, which are all 7 very strong, powerful wizards that end up giving the Fairy Tail members very much trouble in their own ways throughout the arc and stuff like that. Now, this is when we see Gajul and Levy be the first people to get attacked by Grimoire Hearts by this guy named Kawazu and Yomasu. I forgot. One looks like a damn chicken and the other one looks like a damn fucking dog. Eventually this comes in the scene, which is more godly shipping, another godly shipping moment where eventually Gajul's kind of just like, I want to fight somebody and stuff like that, and looking for some stupid grave is boring. This kind of pisses off Levy, and essentially Levy kind of walks away because, you know, eventually Gajul kind of said a backhanded comment being kind of a little bit rude to her, and Levy is like, I'll just do this on my own then, fine. And Levy essentially is like, I thought he was nice, I thought he was a cool guy, I was forming my different opinions on him. And then that's when she gets attacked. Gajul eventually saves her, and then that's when Gajul's like, listen, I don't want you to ever leave my side again when we're together. Again, which is another reference, another godly shipping moment there. And this kind of, and to be honest, this is really where the godly relationship starts. Yes, you can say the godly relationship starts back in the start of the Battle of Fairy Tail arc when Gajul protected Levy from Luxus's lightning. But I really feel here, this is when the godly relationship starts off and becomes essentially the relationship where Levy starts to fall in love with Gajul. Now, Gajul, they don't really have a specified moment where Gajul falls for her. Essentially, by the time we get to the final season, and essentially he confirms that he has feelings for her, which is in the Alvarez Empire arc, we know that Gajul over time started to have feelings for Levy and stuff like that because he started to care about her over time and everything. But if you ask me where Levy's kind of spark turned on for Gajul, or where she kind of got turned on by Gajul, was probably this scene where she saved him, or where he saved her. And that was the moment where the godly relationship essentially started, it kicked off and everything. And I liked this moment. It was very adorable, very sweet of Gajul to do that. And another godly moment, shipping moment, is where when, now I don't know again about the manga because I don't read the manga Fairy Tail, but in the anime, Levy literally solid scripts Iron, because eventually it gets to the point where these two members are just too much for the both of them to combine, and one of them's actually beating up on Levy really bad. Gajul tells Levy, listen, go get help, go tell the others we're attacked, and get to safety. And we see as she's running away, she leaves Gajul one last thing to get him stronger, and she leaves solid script magic used with iron. And where the O would be in the O, it was actually a heart left in there, which, yes, that essentially confirmed that Levy essentially fell for Gajul. And essentially throughout the rest of this arc, they kind of both end up giving backhanded flirtatious comments to one another. Like I said, we start off the arc where Gajul says, like, I'm going to make you bigger than you already are, which is kind of a flirt at Levy. And Levy kind of makes constant flirt saying you know, what is it? This time I'm gonna protect you, you big oaf. Again, like I said, the godly ship is so damn cute, so damn adorable. I see it as a way where a very nice girl falls for like a bad boy type of dude, and over time she starts to change her opinion on him, thinking that oh he's just a bad dude and stuff like that, and he just came into my guild. But obviously, we see Gajil in a way of kind of repenting, for his actions he did to her. Kind of is just like going to be the person that's kind of there. Like we see that they kind of have a connection in the Battle of Fairy Tale arc when he talks to her. That's kind of his whole trying to redeem himself to her. I like Gajul's side of things. Well, I like Levy's side of things where she falls for this dude who she thinks was a bad boy and kind of hurt her and attacked her and stuff like that. But she eventually lightens up to him because she starts to respect him and starts to see how much he's trying to change. And in Gajul's case, I like the fact how he eventually, in a way to try to make everything up to Levy in trying to atone for what he did to her back in the Battle of Fairy Tale arc or back in the Phantom Lord arc, he tries to essentially atone for his sins by always being there to protect her. And over time, instead of probably seeing her as just a friend, he can just go up and say, "Hey, I've been doing this just for you to forgive me of what I did to you." Over time, he actually ends up falling for her because she becomes a big influence in his life. And I really do like the dynamic between their relationship. Again, outside of Gruvia and Nalu, it is my favorite ship in all of Fairy Tale. And I can see why it would be a lot of people's favorite ships. Again, they go back to it every now and then in the series by making funny comments and stuff like that. And I like this ship because it's kind of characters that are like not main characters. They're typically featured on posters for the series, for the different representative arcs, but they're not really main characters. Like they're on like the 50-50 mark of the main character / side characters, so they have a little bit of both. But yeah, eventually Gajil takes down these Kawasu and Yomasu. And apparently, I heard in the manga that when Gajil got stabbed by the sword, it was a lot more gorier or a lot more brutal or more violent than in the anime version. And watching a review, somebody showed the actual panels, and literally Gajil has a sword. The sword actually goes through his legit hands through his fucking elbow. And I'm like, fudge. I understand why they didn't show it because that's pretty violent, but you do wish at the same time you wish they had shown that to give Fairy Tale maybe a darker approach and stuff like that. But hey, it is what it is, and stuff like that. Now, Lily and Carla, they end up finding Mest and Wendy, and essentially they confront Mest, and essentially this is when Mest reveals his card, and he tells him he's from the Magic Council, and he uses mind magic to infiltrate the Fairy Tale to find some sort of way to get them to disband. Because as we all know, the Magic Council after the Tower of Heaven arc rebranded and is a new Magic Council. And we kind of see that the new Magic Council kind of has, for some dumbass reason, some sort of stupid ass vendetta against Fairy Tale when most of the Fairy Tale problems isn't even caused by them. And again, you have these petty ass people in the new Magic Council try to freaking be like, oh, you see, they cause so much pain and destruction wherever they go. And every time they do something, something bad happens. So we got to find some way to disband these group of misfits because, hey, fuck those guys. We don't like them. Acting like anything's going to get any better. And stuff like that. So, yeah. He was doing it just to try to get a promotion or something like that within that Magic Council so he can find a way to disband Fairy Tale, which I think the new Magic Council, is a bunch of dicks and a bunch of assholes. And that's why I love seeing what happens to them when we get to the Tartaros arc. Trust and believe, when I review the Tartaros arc, I'm going to be the first person laughing and saying, oh, they definitely deserve that. And stuff like that. So, yeah. But that's when another member of the Seven Kings of Purgatory, Azuma, shows up, and then he easily just defeats all of them with utter ease. Now, Makarov, he's seeing all this happen because eventually Urza fires a flare to alert everybody that, well, guess what? We have to put the trial on hold. We got enemies coming. Makarov, he sees the ship of Grimoire Hearts and he manages to try to take them out, but eventually runs into his former master, which is Master Hades, and we find out Master Hades used to be, well, guess what? The second guild master of Fairy Tail and stuff like that. And essentially, we find out that the reason why he really went bad is because he found out the true origins of magic, and he wants to kind of control that to make a better world for himself, which we'll talk about later and stuff like that. Now, his real name is Pricked. We kind of see when we later down in the series, which is really the backstory arc, which is called Fairy Tail Zero, see somewhat how he fell to the dark side. But it's crazy to see that a Fairy Tail Guildmaster, a former Fairy Tail Guildmaster, just fell to the dark because he looked too much into the origins of magic, and that's when he kind of became obsessed with it, with Xerath and everything and stuff like that. And then, you know, on my first watch, it's like you see Master Makarov. He's like in his, I think he's like in his 80s. I don't know if he's in his early 80s or his late 80s. I didn't check his age or anything. But I'm like, if this dude is in his 80s, fucking Hades is old as shit. How old is this guy? So yeah, we kind of, by the end of the arc, we kind of find out how he's been living and how much he has all this magic power over time and everything. Eventually, Hades kind of counteracts Makarov. Makarov's about to use Fairy Law, but then Hades does, like, I guess the bastard version of Fairy Law and does this thing called Grimoire Law. It takes out Makarov, and Makarov from this point on is like down for the count for the rest of the arc. He's literally just done and stuff like that. So yeah. Now Natsu, he ends up fighting another seven kin of purgatory named Zonkro, who is a fire god slayer, and how he takes down which is like, I guess, the new opposite to a dragon slayer. That this would be like the power. They have different types of, like, I guess, slaying type of magic. Essentially what a god slayer is the fact that they have magic that, from what they say, can take down a god, just like our dragon slayers. They have magic that can take down dragons. Other magic is used to take down dragons and stuff like that. So yeah, and Zonkro is like one of two god slayers we see in this series. So I like the fact they introduced a new concept, but even when I get to the Grand Magic Games arc with Shelia, I will say a critique of mine is the fact that they didn't introduce any more god slayers. The only other god slayer they could do was probably another elemental type of god slayer that would have been for any of the other dragon slayers. But yeah, but other than that, essentially how Natsu defeats Zonkro is essentially he's trying to defeat him, but Zonkro's too strong with his god slaying magic. And essentially gets to the point where Natsu uses up all his fire magic, and then that's when he's able to eat the god slaying magic, so then he can use a combination of his dragon slaying magic and the god slaying magic to take out Zonkro, and eventually Zonkro is defeated and stuff like that. This is when we also get some other matchups. We have Capricorn face off of Lucy, Gray, Loki, and Kana, but it's really Capricorn versus Loki. And Marty, she ends up running into Urza and Juvia, but eventually that fight turns from Marty versus Urza and Juvia to Marty versus Juvia. Rusty Rose actually confronts Evergreen and Elfman, which kind of starts their little shipping relationship. And then Azuma, after defeating Wendy and the others, goes on to take on Mira Jane and Lazana. And in that fight, essentially, Azuma's looking for a fight. He's like, oh, the she-devil, Mira Jane Strauss. I'd like to fight you. And essentially, Mira Jane's trying to tell Lazana to get out of there. Eventually, Azuma essentially stops Lazana from leaving, traps her with like this plant that is about to detonate. But eventually, Mira Jane kind of somewhat sacrifices and takes the brunt of the explosion so Lazana can be okay. And I forgot to mention too, the Seven Kins of Purgatory, all they what they have, all of them, what they have is this ancient magic called lost magic that essentially kind of is forbidden magic, and stuff like that. Each and every one of them has like this lost magic that is, well, something you wouldn't see in today's fairy tale time, which I liked it because it gave them pretty unique stuff and everything. So yeah. Now, essentially coming back to the Loki versus Capricorn fight, Loki finds out that Capricorn is actually a celestial spirit. But the thing about Capricorn is he's summoning all these humans, and this is when we find out Capricorn is actually being possessed by this guy named Zoldio, who used to work for Lucy's mother, Layla Hartfilia, because when Capricorn finally realizes that that girl is Lucy Hartfilia, the daughter of Layla, he tries to kill her, mostly because that's behind Zoldio's reasoning. Eventually, Loki manages to kick Zoldio out of Capricorn's body with Regulus, but eventually tries to take over Loki's body. But then Capricorn, thanks to a transfer of power from Loki, manages to take out Zoldio, kick him out. Zoldio kind of wanted his human body back, but the only problem with that is, well, since he essentially did this forbidden magic, for what he did was essentially forbidden magic, he essentially got Hakai'd or snapped away from reality, and he literally dies probably the worst way he could die, just by disintegration. That's what I mean. He got Hakai'd. So that freaking sucks. So essentially that's because of this, we kind of see a promise from Capricorn and Layla of the fact that, well, Layla told Capricorn, like, if I happen to die, then make sure you watch out for my daughter, Lucy. And that's what happens. Eventually, his key goes automatically to Lucy. So Lucy has another one of the Zodiac keys in her arsenal, who is a very trustworthy person because, well, it's a spirit that was passed down from her mother, and stuff like that. So yeah. Now, speaking of Ultir, Ultir finds Zareth, and essentially she requests his help with Grimoire Heart. But Zareth is like, you guys are freaking killing here. You guys are here for hostility. What the hell? I'm not helping you. So essentially because of this, he ends up getting in a fight with Ultir and kind of intimidates her. But when he eventually loses control of his power and everything, what happens is Ultra uses her Ark of Time to kind of absorb that wave, the contradictory curse wave, and because of it, she manages to again knock out Zareth, and then essentially it seems like Zareth is going to be under the control of Grimoire Hearts and stuff like that. But we find out that Ultir really wants to use Zareth for her own ulterior motives and stuff like that. So yeah. And it's also stated here that Zareth was unable to use his full power, but by the time we get to the end of the arc, he kind of says, well, I was using my full power from the start regardless. Now, cutting over to the Elfman Evergreen fight against Rusty Rose. Essentially, Rusty Rose magic is essentially whatever he's thinking or dreaming of, he can essentially envision and it can come to him in real life sense, everything. And essentially, the thing is, Rusty Rose is absolutely dominating Elfman and Evergreen and stuff like that. And this is where we get the revelations of the true reason for why Grimoire Hearts came to the island and they're doing what they're doing. And essentially, their plan is to acquire Zareth and lead civilization into the great world of magic, where essentially weaker magic mages or people who don't have any magic can't survive in this realm. And essentially, we see it's mostly coming from Elfman, kind of say like, why would you want a world like that? It doesn't matter if somebody can't use magic. They should all be able to live happily and peacefully, and stuff like that. And it's one of the few many speeches where we see Elfman have really good character. Let me just say this. Elfman, even though he's a literally delegated side character, there's moments from Elfman that actually stand out. Like, again, the Phantom Lord arc was one of his big standout moments and stuff like that. I definitely like that moment. This moment I loved, which essentially started the Elfman and Evergreen relationship, because Evergreen, hearing what Elfman is saying about all sorts of people, whether you're a weaker magic user or a strong magic user, or even a person that doesn't use magic at all. She essentially, and again, a grand scheme of thing, after he says all this line, it kind of sticks up as well. It's also protecting her every now and then throughout this whole run and stuff like that. Essentially, you can say within, she kind of gets turned on and she starts to fall for Elfman. But obviously, which again, like I found it funny because throughout this arc too, there's so many characters that hint at the fact that Elfman and Evergreen like each other, and they're like, we don't like each other like that. But again, like I said, it was a nice big moment from Elfman. Again, Elfman has some of the great moments in Fairy Tale because of some of what he lives by. Like, yes, he's a guy that just screams out, "Oh, manly," but sometimes he actually has these badass moments where he's talking some sense in these guys, and you can really see, oh, this is why he's a Chad. This is why this dude, he believes in why he says that's what a real man should do. And stuff like that. And I think even Evergreen kind of makes a reference to the fact that Elfman is what a real man, that Elfman is really a real man and stuff like that. Even though she kind of gets fed up with his manly talk, we know at the end of the day she clearly likes him, she clearly cares about him. And this is where the spark kind of started between them. And eventually they get captured in this one magic called the Ark of Embodiment, which is like this pillar comes out of the ground and traps them where the magic users can't move at all. And essentially Elfman and Evergreen are kind of reaching out to each other, and Evergreen's kind of telling Elfman like, hey, I'm sorry, I'm the one that held you back throughout the trial and everything, and it's my fault you got put in this situation. But Elfman's like, no, Ever, which he starts calling her by her nickname Ever, which is only like, Evergreen only says only a select people, which is really the Thunder Legion can call her that. And that's why that's essentially another sign that you can tell Evergreen's into Elfman, because she's totally cool with Elfman essentially calling her Ever. And essentially Elfman tells Evergreen, like, no, you didn't make a mistake. If anything, it was my fault because I couldn't protect you because you're my partner and everything. And it's when you kind of have them reaching out to each other, and they make it presume as if they're dead, but no, they're not dead. They're still alive. They're just badly hurt, but not dead. Now, cutting back to Mest. Mest uses his magic to transport himself to Lahar after the wreckage, because I forgot to mention Ozma destroyed the Magic Council reinforcement ships and everything with utter ease. So Mest goes in front of Lahar and tells him everything that's happened, to the point of the fact that, well, Zareth's on the island, Grimoire Heart's fighting Fairy Tale, and stuff like that. And Lahar's like, well, then shit, I guess we're going to have to get in contact with the Magic Council, unleash an Ethereon cannon on them, and guess what? And everything. But Mest, because now seeing that Fairy Tale isn't as bad as he thought it was, he kind of has to change heart. He's like, why? They're innocent people. Let's get them off the island and get them to safety. Then you can fire the Ethereon blast. Or the Ethereon cannon or stuff like that. But Lahar is like, no, we need to fire this thing now. We need to get rid of everything, any traces now, which again, like I said, goes to show you the Magic Council's effed up. They clearly see that there's a guild that has injured people there, and they don't even want to help these people. Yeah, great job. Anyways, they don't even bother wanting it, and because of this, and Mest's change of heart, he just takes the transmission lacrima and takes it to Tenrou Island and stuff like that. And he's like, "Well, guess what? You're not going to do that," and stuff like that. So yeah. Now, eventually, Kana tells Gray and Lucy they should split up so they can find the others and maybe take out some of them other members of the Kin of Purgatory. So, but in the grand scheme of things, Kana is trying to kind of find the Gray set because she's too worried about being an S-class wizard for being her own selfish reasons. To the point she actually asks Lucy, like, oh yeah, tell me about that grave site. And Lucy kind of essentially points out where the grave would be. And because of this, Kana literally knocks out or puts Lucy to sleep. And she's like, I'm sorry, Lucy, but I have to become an S-class wizard. And you kind of see how Kana's kind of selfish and just only gun-ho of trying to become an S-class wizard. How when the red flare went off, she's like, Why now? I'm trying to become an S-class wizard, and this happens at the wrong time. So yeah. Um, eventually, because of this, um, eventually, Lucy eventually confronts what is it? I'm trying to find the person. Um, trying to find the person. I'm going through my notes right now. Uh, Kane Hickory. So yeah, eventually Lucy wakes up to Kane Hickory, which he uses magic that essentially is like voodoo magic. Not to eventually join us in the battle, and thanks to using one of Lucy's hair as a using her as a voodoo doll, essentially controls Lucy to defeat him, and that's kind of it. So yeah. Now Juvia and Marity's fight, that whole fight was kind of nice too, because then there was more development for Juvia as well as Marty. And essentially the whole thing about Marty is she finds that Juvia deeply cares about Gray, and she's wondering why does this girl care about this dude so much? And we find out Marty wants to kill Gray because Gray's at like the top of her kill list, because of what Gray did to Ultir in terms of, you know, Ultir's past and her mother and everything, and she wants to kill Gray. And eventually gets to the point where and she uses her magic, which is sensory magic, where she can link two people and make them feel the same amount of pain, emotions, and stuff like that. Eventually gets to the point where she hooks herself to Gray and Juvia, and she's willing to try to kill herself, because if she killed herself, Gray and Juvia end up dying too. But then that's when Juvia essentially tells Marity, like, why would you kill yourself? Don't you have somebody out there that you love? Like, you have to, and essentially Juvia's telling Marity, listen, you can't die because you have to live for the people you love, which was a nice scene. And essentially we see a flashback where Marity, when she was a little girl, her town was destroyed, and Ultir found her and took her in, and essentially Marity looked up to Ultir like as if she was her mother, and that's kind of what the relationship is. The relationship between Ultir and Marity is, it's an adoptive mother / adoptive daughter relationship. I really do like their relationship here because it's very sweet, it's very sad, and stuff like that. But I'll talk more about that when I get to the end of that arc and everything. So yeah. Now Urza, she fights Azuma, and this starts to be one of the more controversial battles. Now, because Marity went down, eventually Blue Note comes into the charge, which is like the second in command to Hades. Eventually comes across Natsu and the others, takes them down with utter ease. He's got like gravity magic, so he's taking them down. And this one kind of comes across the gravesite of Mavis Vermilion, and she sees that, oh, you can get the skill Fairy Glitter here. And that's when she's like, that's it? Just a freaking spell? That's all I need to become S-class? And then that's when she feels like she's done all this for nothing. But then that's when kind of realizes, shit, I messed up. For my own selfish reasons, I abandoned my friends. I didn't give a fuck about my friends, and I went against them. And I betrayed all of them. I betrayed Lucy. Now, you know, I feel like I have to atone for this. And essentially kind of realizes what she did was selfish and leaving everyone behind and really only caring about what she wants and not caring about what the guild, what is happening in the guild. Because, hey, her guildmates are getting literally on the brink of death or about to get killed by some of these characters from Grimoire Hearts. And she's over here worrying about some S-class trial. Stuff like that. So then she sticks her hand to the fire of the grave, and she's like, please give me Fairy Glitter so I can use it to save my friends. And that's when she gets the skill Fairy Glitter, which kind of becomes her, like, her main type of, you know, finishing blow move, Fairy Glitter. I'm still kind of shocked that Kana in the video game still isn't a playable character, which is weird, but okay. So yeah, but eventually she shows up, Blue Note's also looking for fairy glitter too. He wants to obtain the power of fairy glitter, but the only catch is you can't use fairy glitter if you're not a member of the guild. And that's what kind of was trying to tell Blue Note. Blue Note's not caring. He's like, I don't care. I'll rip it off you. Now, Connor tries to use fairy glitter, but it fails because she's not, strong enough, or she's not accustomed enough to use the spell of fairy glitter, and it kind of backfires and fails. And when it looks like everybody's gonna die, Gildart shows up out of nowhere and saves mostly Kana and everything, but everybody. So yeah, Freed and Bix will also come back to help some of the other members of Fairy Tail at the campsite who are getting attacked again as well. Now, cut into the Urza and Azuma fight. Essentially, the Urza and Azuma fight is probably, again, I would say a very underrated Urza fight. It's now rewatching it, I definitely can say out of the Urza fights I know in the series, it's definitely in my top 10 of Urza fights. Probably top 5 too. I feel like this is actually a pretty underrated fight. And I feel like it's underrated because people think, oh, Urza won because of the power of friendship here. But anyways, this fight happens. Eventually, Urza can't even lay a hit on Azuma, and Azuma's just kicking her butt. And Urza's obviously like, I have to do this and I have to fight for my friends to stop you. And Azuma's like, oh, okay, so you're like a Mira Jane, huh? All right. So he literally takes down the Tenrou Island tree, which essentially we know that the Tenrou Island tree gives power to the Fairy Tail Wizards, and even in some cases an extra boost of power to help them, to get them stronger. So that's why Fairy Tail Wizards are normally much more stronger on Tenrou Island. Because of this depowers them and makes all the Fairy Tail Wizards weaker, and we all see them essentially looking like in a state of where they could all die. And essentially Azuma's like, listen, I only kept your power, so if you defeat me, I'll return the power back to everybody and I'll fix everything. But other than that, if you don't, you all die and everything. And the reason why it's kind of controversial here is because we see that Urza eventually gets beat up, but then eventually comes to the point where Urza realizes that, she hears the voice of Jalal, who's in prison, essentially Calder is saying, Urza, don't give up and everything. That's when Urza kind of realizes that she's been, that her friends have been fighting with her. And yes, you can call this a friendship moment, but technically it's not, because it was stated that the Tenrou tree gives Fairy Tail power when you're on Tenrou Island, and the tree gives you the power. And Azuma clearly said, you still have your same power as if the tree was still there. And Azuma's trying to use the tree against Urza. The only problem to that is it's actually boosting her power and giving her the strength to beat Azuma. And it kind of ends up being a backfiring, a disadvantage to Azuma, because he's trying to use the Tenrou Island tree on her. It doesn't work because the tree won't attack Fairy Tail Guild members as well, or won't go against Fairy Tail Guildmaster. It powers them up. It assists them as like a battery pack. And because of this, eventually Urza cuts down Azuma and defeats him and stuff like that. And because of it, Azuma, continues his promise, gives Fairy Tail back his says, okay, I'll give you back your power, and that's what happens. Marty also runs into Zancro, because Marty ran into Ultir again, and essentially told her, listen, take Zara somewhere safe, and then I'll catch up with you later. Again, showing that Ultir has ulterior motives and stuff like that. So Zancro essentially tells Marty, oh, you're just using Zara for your own selfish reason. That's kind of where Zancro tells, oh, you thought your hometown was destroyed by us? Oh, let this, or some, ulterior motive. Well, guess what? Ultir was the person that led the charge and everything. Now, this is also when we get the start of Gray versus Ultir after Ultir tries to almost kill Juvia. But Gray essentially not falling for, I guess, the trick of Ultir trying to, I guess you can say, try to trick her and betray him, and tell him lies, saying, hey, use Ice Shell on Hades because that's the only way you can defeat him, and do it for me because that's one of Aura's wills. And that's kind of when Gray is like, I found out because you just told me to use Ice Shell, and somebody close to me told me that he wants me never using that spell again, which is a hint back to the Gluna Island arc. everything. So we see in this fight that Gray is having troubles with Ultir's Arc of Time magic, because she can just make his ice make magic just disintegrate into nothingness. But that's when Gray literally cuts himself, infuses his blood with his ice, and because blood is a living thing, Arc of Time magic can affect living things. So because of it, what is it? She ends up getting beat and everything. Well, not beat. Eventually, it comes to the point where she actually starts to use ice make magic on her own. The same ice make magic that was taught to her by Or, her mother. And Gray's like, see, you do have something. You do care for your mother because you're using her ice attacks. But Ultir is trying to deny that she has any feelings or love towards her mother. To the point they both fall into the ocean, and by essentially by feeling Ur's spirit's presence. Essentially, the reasoning behind it explained is because after the Galuna Island incident, when the ice melted, the essence of Ur that was contained in that ice flew into the water or flew into the ocean, and Ultir could sense her mother's presence. We get the backstory of Ultir where Ur took her to this facility led by Brain to quell her magic power because she had excess amounts of magic power. But eventually, Ultir escaped, but then came across Or when she was training Leon and Gray, and Ultir got jealous, really jealous, feeling that Ultir moved on from her because she was seen to be happy and laughing and everything and stuff like that. But Gray told her, like, that's not what Ultir felt like. Like, there was times I walked up on her and I saw her crying and everything. So because she was, again, because that she was jealous, she eventually goes back to the facility, and that's when she gets this whole possessive nature out. She wants to take down her mother and kill her and finish her off and go against everything her mother as a way to repent. And the reason why she was looking for Zareth to use Zareth for her own reasoning is to essentially use Zareth to create this grand magic world, to essentially go back in time and be with her mom and get that love from her mom that she never got in this lifetime of hers and everything. And because of this, it essentially, because of it, we see the backstory of Or, how Or was trying to see her daughter Ultir again, but obviously Brain and the others said the logic saying that Ultir died, and that's when Ultir found out my mother really did care about me, and stuff like that. And that's when she turns good, and that's when she turns for the better, and stuff like that. And that's when Gray told us, like, Ur was never like that. She really did care about you and stuff like that. And Ultir now understands the errors of her ways and says, I've kind of been doing this whole thing in my life for no purpose and stuff like that. So yeah, and this is when we kind of get the change in Ultir's character for the better. And yeah, that's kind of the part where it makes I start to love Ultir as a character, because this is the arc where she tries to do the whole repenting tour and everything and stuff like that. Now the fact that she has this new lease on life and everything. So yeah. But she said, I won't take Zareth, but you have to stop Hades. Obviously, that's what Gray's like, yes, I know. So Natsu, Gray, Erza, Wendy, and Lucy all confront, along with the Xyz, confront Hades. Now, the Xyz are doing their own thing while Natsu and company are taking down Hades. Now, they start off the fight taking down Hades pretty easy. Like, they make Hades work to beat them. But then Hades like, that the best you got? Yeah, funny enough, I'm actually stronger than you originally thought. So he takes them down to the point that they can't even freaking stand. And it looks like he's about to kill Natsu, but then that's when we have Loxus finally return to the series, come back and save the day. He ends up fighting Hades, but then Hades eventually overcomes him and gets stronger than him. And then that's when we see Loxus transfer over his lightning dragon power to Natsu, who eats the lightning. And essentially this one we get one of, I would say, I don't know if I would deem this a transformation, but I guess you can say that, but a power boost here, which is Natsu finally getting the lightning flame dragon mode, which essentially we find out here that dragon slayers can eat another dragon slayer's element, and gives them an extra boost in power and stuff like that. And we see Nazu literally go ape shit all over Hades, where at the end he unleashes a fire lightning dragon roar, and it's presumed that it takes out Hades, but no, it doesn't take out Hades. Hades manages to freaking survive the attack. And what is it? As I hope my freaking phone screen did not crack, which it didn't. Hades essentially takes the hit, and what is it? And he's like, "Yeah, that's it. I'm gonna play hard to catch. You guys are all dying today." So then he essentially unlocks or activates this mode of his called the Demon Eye, which we see all these like demon-like creatures show up out of nowhere and everything, and essentially it scares everybody there and puts fear into them. Natsu's all out of magic power. All of them are all out of magic power. Lucy, Wendy, Gray, and Urza, they're all like trembling in fear, just as fearful Natsu was when Gildarts went full power against him. And I forgot to mention about Gildarts. After they got back the Tenrou tree and everything, Gildarts literally one-shots Blue Note with utter ease. Freed and Bixlow managed to take out the rest of the Gildart Grimoire Hearts like members and stuff like that. So yeah. But that's when it looks like all hope is lost, Natsu essentially remembers what Gildart told him, and he tells it to the other, saying that how fear allows one to learn about their own weakness, repeating it out loud. Again, Natsu stands up and he's saying like, now that we know this fear, and now it teaches us to learn from our weaknesses. So now let's go and get strong from this. Listen, some people can call this a friendship of moment thing here. I wouldn't really call this a friendship of moment because let's be honest, it isn't a friendship of moment thing here. Again, it's what you wanted to interpret. I don't think it is because, yes, they managed to get up. And yes, does it make fucking sense as hell that, if you're fucking scared, you're just going to get up and say, well, being scared means now I know my weaknesses, because I don't think in a real world logic that makes any sense. Yes, it doesn't make any sense, the fact that if you're scared, now you know your weaknesses. That's like telling me, I'm scared if somebody's shooting a gun. I know freaking how to counteract that. I know my own weaknesses. My own weaknesses, that would be not to get shot. So yes, I will say that part is utter BS of the fact that, you feel fear, you can find out your true weakness, and doing that can only get you stronger. Which makes absolutely no sense. That's very much contradictory writing right there. If you know the true innards and outs of it, then please put that in the comment section. But I found that to be utterly like, what the hell is this? But you see how there's not really a power of friendship moment, because it's Natsu just urging his friends, like, listen, we got to stand up, we got to fight. If we go down, we go down. That's fine. But we can't lose this fight and everything. And guess what? They're all charging at Hades, damn well knowing that they don't even have no magic power left. If not, no. And they didn't even unleash any magic powers. Urza didn't equip. Gray didn't use Ice Mage magic. Wendy didn't use Sky Dragon magic. Natsu, when he went in for a punch, he just used a regular punch. He didn't freaking... He didn't use Fire Dragon Iron Fist. Lucy didn't call out a Celestial Spirit. Like, Ninja, these people, sometimes you just kind of figure things. But the real reason, what happened, which essentially became Hades' demise, to the fact that, which shows that this wasn't the power of friendship, there was actually outside forces that affected the fight. So one, while looking for, obviously, a power source to take down the ship, Happy, Carla, and Lily, they find the Grimoire Heart, which essentially held all of the magic power for Hades to make him do these crazy stunts and especially stay alive all these years and stuff like that. They take that out. That takes out Hades' power, so he's not as strong as he once was. And then two, after they do that, Ultir actually uses the Ark of Time magic on the Tenrou tree to put the Tenrou Island tree back to what it used to look like before they even attacked it, rebuilding, essentially making the tree, the tree go back to its original place, which gave Fairy Tail the boost in the magic power they needed, because we know it's already established that under the Tenrou Island tree, Fairy Tail members get stronger under it, or get a more boost in magic in their magic power. And they end up defeating Hades. I think there's a pretty two logical ways to explain how they defeated Hades. It isn't some BS power of friendship way. I didn't think it was. Yes, did it have those elements in the fight? Yes, it had the power of friendship in the element in this fight. But they give two specific reasons. See, this is how it goes to show you that people just hate Fairy Tail for no apparent reason. Look at the fact. You have the Xyz take out the Grimoire heart, which they say in the episode, in the chapter, I don't read the manga, but in the episode they say that was the stuff that gave Hades the boost in power. How he had this abnormal strength and how he was been living this entire time. And then by refixing the Tenrou Island tree, well, guess what? It gave Natsu and the others that extra power they need to be able to finally take down Hades. So please explain to me where there was any power of friendship here. Because it seems to me they defeated Hades pretty logically. They take away Hades' source of power, while Ultir helped them get their source of power back. Doesn't seem like some sort of ass pull to me. I don't know what you people talking about if you're a hater of Fairy Tail, but hey, you're a hater of Fairy Tail. I'm not going to judge you. If you don't like the series, you don't like the series. You're entitled to your opinion. But you don't tell me this fight had the power of friendship. There was like a good 20% to 30% power of friendship was used. Other than that, the remaining percent actually had a legit freaking reasoning to why they actually won. And you can understand, okay, this is how they defeated Hades. Makes sense. Anyways, what is it? After they take down Hades, Makarov and the other guild members of Fairy Tail show up, but Makarov directly talks to Hades, his former master, and Hades says that he was doing this to create the ultimate world of magic and acquire the one's magic. And essentially, Makarov kind of just leaves Hades with this one kind of, GTFO comment out here. And essentially he's telling him that about magic being alive, that all things about magic are alive. And the fact that he's like, yeah, you taught me that lesson, Master Pricked. So suck on that. Which I guess you can kind of say is kind of an eye-opening moment, even though Hades is like, you do know, we'll come back for you and we'll kill you. And Makarov's like, yeah, you can try, but it's probably not going to happen. The one thing after Zeref kind of awakens, he takes down Zencro, and he kind of makes a mention about Acnologia. And that's when Mess was in the area, and he heard that, and he tells him Lahar and the other Magic Council, like, Zeref said Acnologia is coming. And Lahar's like, oh, shit. Well, okay, let's go. Pack our bags, guys. Let's get out of here. So when you want to try to expose Fairy Tail, you'll be the first people to say, let's stay here and let's get rid of these clowns right here. But when a dangerous dragon that shows up, again, I don't blame them. It's a very dangerous dragon. But when a very dangerous, bloodthirsty dragon comes, oh, yeah, peace. I'm out of here. Oh, I don't want to deal with that no more. But we'll deal with Grimoire Hearts and fucking Zeref. Acnologia, no, sirree. Let's get out of here. Let's go home and just tell him, hey, Acnologia showed up. He's going to take them out, so no worries. Yeah, it goes to show you how much I hate the new Magic Council. I can't wait till we get to Tartarus Arc so I can explain how much I loved what happened to them. Anyways, so that's what happens. Anyways, Grimoire Hearts is flying off, and Zeref actually comes on the ship and everything. And essentially, he's like blaming Grimoire Hearts. He's like, who are the ninjas that released frickin' Acnologia? Great. Now, Hades is trying to say, get the keys so we can fully awaken Zeref's power. And so and this is what I found funny. Zeref's like, you have no need for those keys, bitch. What do you need those keys for? I was awake this entire time. And obviously Hades like, but Ultir, I saw what Ultir did. You clearly wasn't using your full power. And Seraph's like, I wasn't using my full power? Oh, please. I was using my full power in that fight. Let's get something straight. And stuff like that. I just love how Zeref is kind of just ripping Hades apart. Now, he tells Hades, saying that he's seen countless people die in war 400 years ago and realized how valuable lives are. Again, he says like this curse in my body that started taking lives against my will. And he says in order to stop such effects, Zeref had to forget the importance of lives over time and stuff like that. But Zeref's like, but because you made me realize how much that people think that lives are worthless. I hate to bring it to you, but you're gonna all die here and stuff like that, and you're gonna be punished for your effort. And it's funny because even Zeref's like, those keys you mentioned trying to awaken me, they were just fabled tales that were told by people. You didn't need no damn keys. I was awake this entire time. So guess what you did? You essentially killed all these people for no apparent reason. Just creating chaos and war and stuff like that. How does that make you feel now? Now you gave me a purpose, and that's to exterminate people in this era. And guess what? Acnology is on the way. He's going to get rid of this new era. And guess what? I'm going to be another catalyst to get rid of this new era because you caused it. And then he just kills off Hades like there's nothing and kills off the other two people around him too. So, yeah. Now, we get the end to Marty and Ultir's storyline before we see them in the 7-year time skip again. And essentially, Marty asks Ultir, did you really take out my village? And Ultir is like, yes. She eventually stabs herself and she's like, why would you want to live with me? Listen, I've just been a person that, has just been killing and has too much blood on my hands and stuff like that. And I don't want you to do the same to me. So I'm going to do it within myself. And it looks like she's going to kill herself and sacrifice herself by drowning in the water. But Marty comes up and says, listen, I don't want that to happen. I don't want you to die, regardless how you feel. I don't want to ever feel, you like that again. And essentially they have a nice embrace moment where Marty says, you're my mother and stuff like that. And I love you, Ultir. Which, listen, it was a heartfelt moment, man. Dude, let me just say this. I forgot to mention too. Also, I see Ultir and Gray as like siblings, like brother and sister. So I kind of see it like that. And I definitely see Ultir and Marty, like I said earlier in the video, like mother and daughter. I really do love it. The Ultir-Marty relationship hits me home because it's like Ultir now has a new lease on life. And it's like now she can treat Marty like how her mother never got to treat her. And she can call Marty like her daughter now, that she wants to look out after and stuff like that. So, yeah. Now, this is also too, we get another emotional moment here. We hear Kana eventually tells Gildarts that, well, now she has the courage. Kana tells Gildarts that I'm your daughter. And essentially Gildarts is shocked and surprised. He remembers who her mother was, stating that her mother was the only mother he ever married and that he loved. They divorced because Gildarts was apparently taking too much work. And essentially, Gildarts just tells Kana, like, listen, let me just be a good father to you that loves and cares about you and is there for you. And that I'll protect you. That's kind of it. Now, this is when things go from bad to worse, because that's how every fairy tale arc ends, with some sort of repercussions for the arc's action. And that is in the form of the Black Dragon of the Apocalypse, Acnologia. And essentially, Acnologia shows up. He essentially raids. Now, Master Makarov tries to fight it off. At the same time, again, like I said, I told you this wasn't the end. Like, you go back to my Battle of Fairy Tale arc review. I mentioned Makarov was supposed to die in that arc. Well, guess what? He didn't die. That was one of his many death flags. Here's another death flags, guys. Master Makarov was willing to sacrifice his life to Acnologia. Now, the question is this. If you want to ask me, do you think Master Makarov should have died here? Honestly, I wouldn't care if Makarov died here or not. Now rewatching it, he could have died, and it could have been like, oh, Fairy Tail moves on to the next era of generation with new Guildmaster and stuff like that, because hell, Derek made mention that this new era needs to die and stuff like that. And I guess you can say Makarov's like a member of the old era and stuff like that. So yeah, listen, this is only this almost death flag scene didn't really piss me off, not until you get to Alvarez Empire arc. But I wasn't really phased by it, so it didn't really matter to me, if I'm being honest. So not really, it didn't get me, because eventually when it looked like he's gonna die, the Fairy Tail members come back, try to fight for their master, and they try to unleash all these powerful attacks. But Acnologia, to the dismay, is well, let's just say, takes it like a champ, has no damage on him whatsoever. And yeah, that's kind of it. So eventually, because of it, this makes everybody scared. Lucy's literally trembling. She's like, I don't want to die, but Natsu says, listen, you know, Natsu essentially tells Lucy, listen, it doesn't matter, because it doesn't matter how strong the opponent is, they can never defeat Fairy Tail, because we'll overcome all. And one of the great scenes, one of the most memorable scenes of Fairy Tail, is where you have all the members of Fairy Tail linking up, holding hands. As Acnologia fires his attack, we see that Tenrou Island is utterly just annihilated and everything. And this scene hits really damn hard, because if you're watching this for the first time, you're led to believe like, oh shit, they all died. And it really does hit hard. And again, the whole scene was just perfectly done. It was really done, and stuff like that. So yeah. Now we see 7 years have passed in the Fairy Tail world. We see that Fairy Tail, we see a much older Romeo. We see Alzak and Bisca are actually a couple now. So just like their Edalus counterparts, they eventually hooked up and they settled down. Now, the thing with the current day Fairy Tail 7 years, or after the time skip, is essentially Fairy Tail is like one of the worst guilds out there now. And we have like this one guild called, I forgot what it's called. Be like kind of antagonize them. We see that clearly the members that stayed behind clearly mourn and are still haven't gotten over the loss of all of their friends from 7 years ago. And we see the pain and suffering they've been going through. Like at one point, Fairy Tail was the like best guild, and then lo and behold, they're gone. And we find out from them that Blue Pegasus and Lamia Scale tried to eventually help them at first in their whole response of trying to find any remnants of them, but never could, and they eventually gave up. But then that's when Ichia and Blue Pegasus member says, oh yeah, eventually we got a reading of Ether Nano saying that Tenrou Island's not gone. So some members of Fairy Tail go to the site of Tenrou Island, and we see Tenrou Island event return, raise up, because they see Mavis, the first master, she raises up. And when they find everybody, Mavis essentially explains that 7 years had passed, telling this to the people trapped inside this bubble, and says the reason why they survived Acnologia's blast was because everybody had faith and the bonds and trust between each other. They converted that stuff into magic power, and the guild's unanimous thought, or unanimous thoughts, essentially, and their feelings turned into one of the great spells of Fairy Tail, which is Fairy Spear, which is one of the 3 great fairy magics, and is an absolute defensive magic that will protect the guild from any evil. And essentially, the arc ends with Natsu and the others coming back into the shackled down Fairy Tail guild, with Romeo and the others welcoming them back home. And that's where the arc ends. But yeah, that's the Tenrou Island arc. Again, like I said, the Tenrou Island arc was a very great arc. I thought it definitely was the arc that changed the game because that's when we get introduced to Zareth, Acnologia, and things like that. And just the emotional moments throughout this arc was just very hard hitting and everything. And I very much enjoy this arc. Like I said, it's not in my top 3 favorite fairy tale arcs, but it's in my top 5 favorite fairy tale arcs. It's probably my 4th favorite arc of the series all time. Because the stakes it had in this arc. And the fact that they just easily go into the 7-year time skip. And the thing about the time skip is, they were essentially in a prison ice state, like a coma-like state to where they didn't age or anything, like frozen in time essentially. So yeah, that's kind of it. So yeah, on the next episode of my fairy tale arc reviews, we will be not discussing the next canonical arc of the series, which is the Grand Magic Games arc. We are going to differentiate and go to the main filler arc in the anime called the Key of the Starry Sky arc. Woo! Don't you love filler arcs? Now, yeah, so just give some slight, I guess, distance between this arc and the Grand Magic Games arc, because if you read the manga, you go straight into the Grand Magic Games arc. This arc is an anime-only arc. The Key of the Starry Sky arc is the anime-only arc. And essentially, a brief summary is the fact that after the events of Tenrou Island, 7 years have passed. It's just the fairy tale members getting adjusted to the 7-year time skip, as well as coming across another foe that is looking to get this one device because one of Lucy's family members shows up. So we deal with characters, the Earthland characters of the Edalus people we saw in Edalus, like Hughes, Hughes, Sugar Boy, Coco, all these other stuff. At the same time, we see the return of the Irration Sace in that arc too. From what I remembered, I don't like the arc. I don't. Like, the arc's all right, fine with me. It's definitely a better filler arc than the Celestial Spirits filler arc. But I still am like, I couldn't really get myself into this. It kind of was like, it's not that good. Like, it's a decent, if I'm being positive, it's a decent filler arc, but it's nothing special. So yeah, but next week, for Fairy Tale arc reviews, you won't be getting the Grand Magic Games arc. You'll be getting the Key of the Starry Sky arc. And I'm gonna refute this point now, before I get out of here. But the Grand Magic Games arc, I'm just gonna let you guys know, since it's so damn long, because it's one of the longest arcs in Fairy Tale. For some reason, they made the 3 last arcs in Fairy Tale, Grand Magic Games, Tartaros, and Alvarez Empire, like 3 of the longest fucking arcs in Fairy Tale. So in Grand Magic Games, there will be a 2-part Fairy Tale arc review for that. Same goes for Tartaros, and same will go for the Alvarez Empire. The last 3 arcs, the Fairy Tale canon story arcs, will be 2-part will be 2-part reviews because there's too much to cover in one damn video, and I don't want to be here for an hour. I think this video was probably about an hour, so I don't know as I'm recording this. Yeah, just to let you know, so Grand Magic Games will be 2 parts. I'll tell you when we get to those videos what I'll be going up to. So yeah, but other than that, if you guys like the video, leave a like, put in the comment section your thoughts on this week's episode of Fairy Tale arc reviews. What are your thoughts on the Tenrou Island arc? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Whatever. Hit that subscribe button if you want to get more Fairy Tale arc review content. And then I guess you can say hit us when you do hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell icon to make sure you get updated to anything I upload to the channel, whether it's Fairy Tale, other anime, or stuff like that. Other than that, guys, I'm the Godfer. Hopefully you guys have a great rest of your day or night. We're checking out this video. Until then, guys, stay safe out there. Peace.